welcome back to our second episode. I'm Emery Wolf. Somewhere is Nick Lamb.
Over here.
And we are two camera guys. Welcome to this episode. Today, just getting into it, Nick, we are starting off with an interview with Layton Burton, who's basically done everything camera you can possibly think of. He's currently teaching with the UofR, I believe.
Yes.
And from that, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, Nick. We have an elephant on our own show. I think you know what that is. And lastly, kind of wrapping up the year, all the year-end review videos are out right now. We'll have a little chat about that as well.
Yeah.
So I guess getting right into things, let's talk to Layton.
How are you two?
Holy cow. Wow.
You look just the same, Nick, as you did in the summer.
Oh,
great.
So Layton, Emery and I had not a bet going, but I was guaranteeing that you would remember Emery, and he was guaranteeing that you wouldn't.
Okay. I think you're going to lose, Nick.
Oh, no.
Okay, so Emery, tell me. Just give me a hint. Give me a hint.
Well, I worked in the office all the time. That's why you wouldn't remember me. It's like when you guys were trying to order stuff or whatever, that all ended up going through me. So I worked with Cindy and Ty a lot.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Interesting that you remember, because I was never in the office. Like they had to drag me kicking and screaming into the office, generally speaking.
Yeah. Well, or I would get sent to set, right? To pick up things, drop off things, take whatever direction people wanted. So depending on the shows, I can't even remember a specific show we would have worked on together.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot of them.
Please tell me that I was always kind and respectful. Please.
Oh yeah. The camera department was always good. They're always quiet, always, the only time they needed things, they would ask specifically for what they needed and we'd go get it and it'd be done. So it was always
that's good to hear. That's very good to hear. Yeah. Because I think about that sometimes because, I'm one of those people that in this world of cinema in Saskatchewan that readily admits that we made some mistakes. But we were no excuses, but we were brand new. It was exciting. It was, as Nikki, as you both know, it was quite a time, and we'd never done it before, and you know what? So we made a lot of mistakes, in my opinion, with people and with the situation that should it ever come back, we're not going to do it again. We're not going to make the same mistakes, I hope. And that's one of the goals that I have. That's why
that's nice.
So
we're here. So what we're basically, Emery and I have been camera guys we met up again with the Pats operating camera and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And so basically we just thought you'd be perfect because you've kind of done it all. Like you've done started in news.
Yep.
You've operated sports. I think you've operated NHL, Olympics.
I have
everything.
Yes, I have.
Moved to cinema, camera operator, DOP, Steadicam operator. Like, somebody to just kind of, if somebody learning or wanting to get started in the industry, I feel like you'd be the perfect guy to talk to in many ways.
Thank you. And it was a journey. It still is a journey. And now I'm teaching. So.
And now you're teaching. Yeah.
I know it's part of that journey that just never ends. Right. My wife and I, we always joke and, cause she says, she's a few years away from retiring. And I always ask her how many years away from retiring am I? And she says, about 15. Well, I'm going to be 60 next year. So that's a long time, but you know what? It's been the ride of a lifetime. Really, it has.
That's actually a good question. Do camera people ever actually retire?
It's a good question. Yes, absolutely, Emery. I don't know. I know I'm not going to. I love it. You can't, I don't know if you can see it, but I brought a camera home from school. It's right behind me.
Oh, nice.
I was off today shooting pictures in the neighborhood because I can't get enough of it. It's weird. Some people might say it's an illness.
Well, what was your, what got you started in it? Like what?
Well, I'll tell you, I know exactly what got me started in it, and I've told this story probably. If I've told it once, I've told it 1,000 times. One really, really hot summer, my dad and my mom and my two sisters, Shelley and Carla, we ended up on a holiday, and we were going west towards Alberta for some reason, and we happened to stop in a little town called Maple Creek. And I remember it being really hot because the station wagon that we had didn't have air conditioning back then. So we had the windows down, and my dad allowed us to stick our feet out the windows, and I always thought that was pretty neat. Because he was a big stickler for like seatbelt. He was one of the first adopters of seatbelts, long before they were a standard item in vehicles. Anyway, we ended up in Maple Creek, and we had nothing to do one day, my dad and I. And he said, "Well, let's go downtown, you and I, and we'll see what's there." And we ended up in a secondhand store. And I remember walking up to the counter and looking up at the ceiling, and there was a shelf behind the glass counter, and there were all these boxy looking cameras. And I knew they were cameras because I could see the lenses in them, and there were multiple lenses, multiple round lenses. And I said to my dad, "What are those?" And he said, "Well, those are Kodak Brownie cameras. And they are something that I learned when I was a teenager, how to operate and how to shoot." And my dad at that point was a very active amateur photographer. He loved it, but just for himself. And I said, "Oh, they're so cool looking." And he said, "Well, do you want one?" And I was taken aback. I said, "Oh, well, yes, I want one." I have no idea what he paid for it, but suddenly I had a black Brownie camera in my hands as we walked home to the campsite that we were staying at. And he had also purchased some rolls of film. And so we spent that summer camping all over Western Canada, and he teaching me how to expose film, how to frame, how to compose, what film was about, what cameras were for, how to operate them. And I remember getting really frustrated at the beginning because I had no concepts whatsoever about any of it. And he gave me this advice, and I've taken this advice my entire career. And Nikki, you've probably heard me say this a few times in the camera truck, right? He said to me, "When you get discouraged, just let the camera see what you see." And that just clicked for me. Like it was a door opening. It was an invitation to explore how a Brownie camera worked, how I would make it work, and how I would let that camera see what I saw. And it's been a journey ever since, because every time, as both of you know, every time you go on a new show, there's always something new in the camera department, whether it be a camera or a camera support or a type of film or a process. And I've spent my life just letting cameras see what I see. And that's how it started.
That's crazy. So did your dad have some sort of background in it that he kind of gave that to you? Or?
You know what? He was in the Navy when he was a very young man in his early 20s. And he took a camera with him that his father had given him. He grew up in Fairlight, Saskatchewan, and he took it with him to the war. He was stationed on the HMCS Halifax, and it was moored off the coast of Edinburgh in Scotland. And he loved to just wander the ship and take pictures and take pictures of wherever the ship would sail. And he would show me those pictures. So yeah, it was something that he was interested in, but he never took it to a professional level. He was an architect by trade, and he loved shooting, job sites, and he loved shooting the finished work. He had all kinds of framed photographs of the buildings that he and his company had built. So yeah, no, he was very avid, but never became a professional.
So how did you end up making that transition from, doing it kind of for fun as a hobby to like one day, like, oh man, I can do this as a living?
Well, and that's another story that I've told before, but I'll tell it again. I remember my dad and I went to a Rough Riders football game, and we didn't have season tickets or anything. We just went every couple of years, and one of the times we were there, our seats were right next to a CBC hard camera that was televising the game. I think it was a playoff game. I remember it being very cold. And I thought, what the hell is this thing that I'm beside? Oh my God, look at the size of it. Well, you guys know, and perhaps some of your viewers and listeners don't know what a hard camera is, but it's the big bodied camera with the great big long lenses on it that you see at all the sporting events to this day. But it was right beside me. And so I got up the nerve and gumption to ask the camera operator, like, what is this? Can you tell me? I'm really fascinated by this. And he spent a lot of the game when he wasn't working telling me what it was all about. Wow. And I was hooked, absolutely hooked. And I remember being in the car driving home, and I said to my dad, is there some place I can go to university? Because my dad was very avid or very adamant about all of his kids going to university. And I said, is there any way I can go to university and learn how to, do what he does? And my dad said, yeah, I'll look into it and see what I can find. Oh, wow. And between the two of us, over the years, we just sort of kept talking about that. And the very first, when I graduated high school, the very first thing that the two of us did is we sat down and we did an application for Ryerson Polytech in Toronto, because that's where I wanted to go. It was the best film school in the country that we had researched. And but it was during a time in our country when there was a great division between what used to be called Eastern Canada and still Western Canada, but now Toronto and Quebec and those kinds of that geography is now Central Canada, and Eastern Canada is considered to be the Maritimes. But we didn't talk about Canada that way. It was like West or East, good or bad, and the West was good and East was bad. But they only took so many Western students, so I didn't get in. They said, they sent me a nice, pleasant letter saying, hey, great application, blah, 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 but you're from Saskatchewan. We've already filled up our quota of Western people, and you didn't get in. So I thought, what am I going to do now? So my dad said, well, I think there's a school in Calgary called Mount Royal College, and I think you should go to it. And so I did. So went to school, came out of school, and got hired at CTV today, but CKTV back then. I got hired on as the buggy driver, which is the delivery guy for the station. And it was one of these rites of passage at CKTV that almost everybody who was anyone at the station started as the buggy driver. So I kind of felt like I was stepping in line, to make my fortune. And a month after being the buggy driver, one of the camera people at CKTV left for CBC, and I got the job. So that was the beginning. And that was 1982, 83. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Sorry for throwing you off there, laughing at the making your millions on
Yeah. I was going to be the greatest buggy driver ever. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. So yeah, that was the beginning. And I learned how to shoot news and that was part of the journey. Right.
Did you ever operate those hard cameras?
I did. And I was terrible at them. I just, it was never something that I was comfortable with because I was an ENG guy. I loved the feel of having something on my shoulder and something close. And I loved the energy that being a handheld camera operator would give you. That's one of the reasons why I loved shooting hockey for TSN, because I was always visitors ice level everywhere, and which is either camera 4 or camera 5, depending on what arena you're in. And so that's how I got to be known, camera 4 or camera 5, one of the two. But yeah, just that the transference of physical energy to composition and the excitement of the game was just something that I loved, absolutely loved.
When you shot hockey, did you end up like traveling all over the place with TSN, or were you mostly like Calgary, Edmonton?
Well, in the beginning, we did. There was a rotation, and you rarely, if ever, left the West. So I did lots of games in Winnipeg and Edmonton and Calgary, the occasional one in Vancouver, and I did one in Chicago, which was great fun. Loved it. First of all, to be in the United States and in an arena like the United Center to see a hockey game. And then be a part of it. And, they stuck me, I was that oddball guy. They stuck me in between the benches. So I had the Florida Panthers on one side and then Chicago Blackhawks on the other. And, those were the days of Steve Larmer and Tony Amonte and, Brent Sutter. And I met Vladislav Tretiak.
Wow.
During warm-ups. He was the goalie coach for the Blackhawks at that point. And I just remember looking up at him, and I'm tall, I'm 6'3", and I looked up to lad. He was huge. But what an exciting time. And that was what it was all about. It was the TSN days for me in hockey was all about seeing heroes and future stars. And I love hockey to this day. And, I was sad to retire from that, but the body just couldn't do it anymore.
What was that? It was just physically, because it's weird.
Oh, it's physically draining. Oh yeah. Doing mobiles is absolutely physically draining. And, as you get older, it's harder and harder to set up and then tear down. And I remember distinctly too, that when I realized it was time to pull the pin from this was a few years ago here in Regina, and the World Juniors were here, and they were going back and forth between Regina and Saskatoon. And the mobile would drive in and you'd set up and then you'd do the game and then you'd tear it down and the mobile would drive to Saskatoon. And then the next day the mobile would come back from Saskatoon and you'd set up and shoot the game and tear down. And, set up and tear down is like you start at 7 a.m. and you're ready to go by 7 p.m. And then the game's over at 10 and you're tearing down till 1 a.m. and then turning around and doing it the next day. So it's physically draining as I got older. I think my last handheld game as a hockey camera person was, I think it was like I was 49 or 50 at that point. And it was tough, really tough, especially when you had to travel too. And lots of arenas weren't great. Like the Saddle Dome, I hated going there. And Winnipeg was a tough one too, because there was lots of cable hauling, and it was long before the days when they'd actually build arenas that you could just plug and play, right? Like all the new ones. But there was lots of grueling work. But I loved it.
That World Juniors was a lot of fun for me, because at that time there was basically me and Kenny. I always forget Kenny's last name.
Yes.
We were shooting for the Pats at the time, and we were the only two. And so when you guys rolled in, they took all the TV feeds for the replays and stuff, and we got kicked off. But I spent the entire tournament ice level sitting down where John Liu was. Yeah. And I remember talking to him about Peter Angelo. And it was by far that tournament was a lot of fun for me to work.
Yeah. And again, one of the joys of living in Western Canada is you got to do hockey all the time, and it's a religion here. So it was fun to see all those players and be a part of it, to feel like I was a part of it too. And you'd get to know, being that my camera would always be with the visitors at the visitors entrance. I got to know some of the coaches and the GMs over the years, and it's funny, it's all come full circle. I don't know if you guys ever knew Mick Magoo, he was a born and raised Regina guy and became an NHL referee. And especially when we were in Winnipeg, it used to be fun to see Mick, and he was a wonderful guy. And we'd chat back and forth, and tragically he died very, very young. And you know, here's the come around is one of my students is his daughter, Carly Magoo. And so we have this connection between, she's my student, but I knew her dad, and
Oh, wow.
it's a really nice connection to have from my TSN days. And that was getting to know Mick a little bit. I didn't know him, you know, very well, but you know, I knew his name, he knew mine. So
Yeah, what would you like to talk about more, Layton? The film days, like becoming a camera operator, DOP, or news stuff?
well, you know what, I think that I kind of look at my news days and my TSN days as building the nucleus of who I became. And I love narrative film. I love being a part of narrative television and narrative feature film work. So, you know, if we can, I'd like to spend some time on that. Right, Nikki, that's where you and I met. So
yeah, it is. Yeah, I remember I went up to Saskatoon to work on a commercial, and I was picking up the camera equipment from George. And this was the moment. This was when I kind of realized, okay, I should listen to what Layton's saying, because I was packing up all the gear and all the stuff, and then George goes, "Who's on this commercial with you?" And I said, "Layton's operating it," and he just goes, "Okay, well, he just basically like, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about explaining anything else to you. Here's the stuff. Cool, I know it's in good hands." Like, just the amount of respect that George had, I was just like, okay, I want to get there someday where somebody can just say, here's the gear. I know this guy's on the shoot. No worries.
George has been, we came up together, so George has always been a good and loyal friend.
So actually, Nick, now I have a question for you. Did you ever reach that pinnacle?
No. No, it's more like Nick's on the shoot. We better write their names on all the stuff so that nothing gets lost.
That's not true. That is absolutely not true. I remember I used to call you and Toddy my security blankets. If you were on the commercial, if you were on this television series or the feature, I was going to be okay.
So how did you end up getting into that feature side?
I went out and I spent the money and took the training and practiced a lot, and I became a Steadicam operator. And I did my very first feature film with the CSC DOP named Mark Debrescu, and the film was called Shot in the Face. And I went and did the film for free, just to get the experience. And working on that, I knew almost from day one that, okay, this is what I want to do. This is a lot to bite into, and it's going to take a long time for me to at least master, you know, what my job title told me I was, and that was a camera operator. And it was between myself and Mark Debrescu and Todd Irving and Ken Krawchuk that, you know, the four of us, you know, for so long became almost inseparable on, you know, from project to project. And I learned a ton from Todd. I truly do credit Todd Irving with giving me he was an encyclopedia of film and cinematography, and I shouldn't talk about him as if he's dead, but he's just he's just moved to another career. But he was, you know, he's one of my best friends in the world still to this day, and I credit him with, you know, giving me so much knowledge, absolute encyclopedia of knowledge. Yeah.
It's funny you say those names and say that too. I've got an old like camera breakdown from Mark that I kept because I seen it. I was like, this is the most perfect thing. This is what I want to model myself after as well.
Yeah. And that was the thing too about the film world back then. And maybe it is still to this day, but we were all so close. Like, you know, unfortunately, my brain being what it addled, and not being in the office, Emery, you're very new to me, but Nikki can attest to that it was very, very family oriented. We all, there were very rarely any squabbles between us, even though a lot of us were competing for this show or that show, and it was all very collegial, and we were all learning, and we were all a part of something that was, I describe it still to this day as something wonderful.
So I'm not too sure if it was drastically different, but it sounds like your training was drastically different with the Steadicam. So I'm assuming you ended up going down to like California or somewhere.
Yeah, I did two workshops. The first one was in Maine, and I got to work with some Steadicam operators, American Steadicam operators, and the first one was kind of like, I'm not sure if I want to do this, if I can do this, and it really solidified in my mind that it was something that I loved doing. And again, I'll harken back to the being handheld on, and it's just that the physicality between operator and camera, and then the artistic component in composition and framing. So, I did that first one in Maine, and then I did a second one in Malibu, and the one in Malibu, I actually already had a rig, took it with me to the States, and did that workshop, and met some people, and I think that was back in the 90s, and I'm still friends with them to this day, and most of them have retired from Steadicam because we're not young anymore, but and I still remain friends with them. So
now, would you I think I know the answer to this, but I'm just curious, would you, without your base knowledge, be able to go take that course and jump into operator? Because that doesn't seem,
I think it would be really hard. I think one thing that working in television news and documentaries, and working at then jumping to CBC and doing arts and entertainment and working with outside producers, was it gave you a really good overview of what was expected from you as a cinematographer / camera operator in television, and it gave me a really rich knowledge of how to think on my feet and how to make the best of situations cinematically with very little, because there is really no money in news and no money in documentaries, and you just sort of had to build your own kit with your own money, and it gave me the ability to stretch and find my way. And I think that's a really good question. That I think if you really want to work in film and television in the narrative sense, that you should go and do some things to build your chops up first. I don't think you can just dive in and do it.
yeah, I don't think you'd even be.
Would you agree, Nick? Would you agree?
Yeah, I don't think you would be welcomed on set without any, because it would just be like, who is this guy? Almost like,
yes,
it would be kind of like the driver with CTV. Like, that is kind of how camera operating works. You almost don't start as the camera operator.
Yeah, you work your way up and in, right? So yeah, that's a good question.
So with that said too, what would you say is like the most important thing for people to learn that are trying to get into it?
Well, try to never give up. Try to, and it's difficult sometimes because, I hope it's getting better, but again, as the both of you will attest to, I'm sure that it can be a very difficult business too. You got to work with a lot of people who have personalities that, let's face it, they're shitty people. And they treat people like garbage. And, we took a lot, Nikki and I, on set from people, and I hope that people don't have to do that anymore. But just, if it's something you really want to do, just keep working at it when you can. And don't let other people dissuade you from trying to reach that goal. I mean, it's certainly more difficult now in Saskatchewan without a tax credit or an incentive, but you can still find independent productions happening all the time, and it might even be better that way, because the expectations perhaps aren't as grave for you if you're a brand new camera operator or a brand new cinematographer, or you're a brand new gaffer or key grip. you have latitude to make mistakes. Where when in the days when the three of us were working in professional film and television, it was a very, very small window of being able to screw things up, and you didn't want to do it more than once. So I think if it's something you really, really want to do, just keep working at it and take your time. Take your time.
Yeah, I think that's really important. But it definitely doesn't happen overnight.
No, absolutely not. Well, hey, this is, I think, I'm trying to think, I'm sure I'm very close to my 40th year, and here I am still on the journey. And, it's, as we talked about earlier, like retiring, what's that? It's something I love to do. And it's become so much a part of who I am too.
I want to move into the work you're doing now, but just before we get into that, I'm wondering if you have a really good story that will embarrass Nick Lamb a little bit.
Oh my God. That's got so many. so many. Gosh, Nick was always that. And I remember Nick as a trainee under Todd on Corner Gas. I think it was Corner Gas, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Nick,
I
that
would
you were
have
the
been
trainee?
21 years old.
Yes, just a kid. And I just, I don't have anything that will embarrass Nick, because he never did anything to embarrass himself. But I do remember how important it was for him to have spiky hair. And he didn't like anyone to touch his hair or flatten his hair. And he hated wearing a hat, no matter how hot it was, because it would ruin his spiky hair. So I do remember the 35-degree days at Corner Gas on Main Street, and just thinking to myself, okay, there's Nick. He's fair-skinned, blonde-haired, spiky blonde hair, and he's covered in sweaters and long pants, but he refuses to wear a hat, which is probably the most important thing, right? But no, he would rather just drop dead from sunstroke than have bad hair, either on set or in the camera truck. So that's what I remember physically the most about Nicholas, was that I was like, how does he get his hair to do that every day? That takes work and time. Good Lord, where does he find either one of those?
I'm so happy I asked that. I think I should start calling them 98 Degrees in honor of the boy band.
There you go. Yeah.
So getting into what you do now, like, just that it would feel really good to start teaching kids what to do.
Yeah, it does. I feel like I've really come full circle, because I remember being that kid. And I think I was always the personality on set that would welcome new people to set. And, Nick, I hope you will agree with that.
That's part of, I think one of the keys that actually helped you be very successful, not only talent, but like just a very welcoming, likable, easy to get along with person.
Yeah. And I'm glad, because I remember most of the people who treated me shittily or poorly coming up, and I don't know where they are now, but most of the people all of the people that treated me well and treated me with respect, I'm either still friends with, or they've gone on to do great things. And I think if you can use those kinds of people as your mentors, then you'll put yourself in good stead as your career moves along. But yeah, I love teaching. I love young filmmakers. I love teaching them what I know, and I love seeing what they can do, because young people today are different from when I was a young person on set. So much of, and I'll include the two of you in that, that's so much of what you do now, it was innate in you from the beginning, because you grew up in a media savvy world where we didn't. I was a kid in the 60s and the 70s, and you'd go through the Sears catalog to find Bell and Howell cameras that shot Super 8. But they were out of reach for any regular person to buy. And now you guys probably grew up with phones to a certain degree. And that's a camera in your pocket, man. That's just something that young people today, young filmmakers today have that edge on where we were, in a planetary sense when we were their age. So that's what makes it so enjoyable is I tend to learn from them as much as I teach, and they hopefully learn from me.
That actually, it's funny too, coming full circle again. I think like starting out as like a Steadicam or going into the Steadicam operation, and how it is now with technology, and a 90-pound rig that you would have started out with is now a handheld thing for a DSLR.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I remember being so excited too when I did my first helicopter shoot, and what a big deal that, Nick, I know that you have worked on helicopter commercials with me, and what a huge Magilla that is to set up, operate, and tear out. Pardon me. I don't have COVID. It's just dry. And now you can do it all with a $200 drone that you can operate with your phone. So yeah, it's everything's changing so quickly, but I think it's changing for the better because it's so much more accessible to people, and you don't need to be totally privileged to become a filmmaker. And I think that's become, as I've gotten older, to be a much more important aspect to what I do and who I want to be with doing my career now.
So I got a question. This is more of a selfish question, but so when I'll operate for the Pats and the Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
But especially with the Warriors, but even with the Pats too, you'll get some younger, newer operators.
Mm-hmm.
And typically my advice is practice. But what's some more practical advice to pass on to somebody that's starting out with that? Because I always kind of wonder, like, yeah, practice, but like, what should I be telling or suggesting to people to possibly work on?
I think I have the answer to that, Nick. And I think that the answer to that is do your diligence even before you show up and to practice. Make sure that you have everything you need to do what you need to do. I see this in some of my students when they first start at J School, and they go into one of my labs, is they just kind of wing it rather than plan and be purposeful. And as I always like to say, do their due diligence before the shoot. So make sure you have a plan. Make sure you have everything you need. Plan for the worst, hope for the best. Technology will always fail you. And when it fails you, you need to have a backup. You need to be able to turn that around quickly. Everybody realizes that technology will fail you. And when it does, people go, oh, okay, well, what are you going to do now? Well, you better be able to know what to do now and not just sit there. So I think that, yeah, practice is really important especially when you're trying to be something that is has a real artistic bent to it, like being a cinematographer or a camera operator, because they're two distinctly different things. But plan, be ready, take the time, show up on time, show up early, right, Nick? Show up. If you come in and it's 10 minutes to your call, you're late. You don't have time to prep your gear. You need to be there. I always tried to be there 30 minutes before, whether I was on the clock or not, just so that I would be able to prep my gear and plan and do my diligence and make sure that I knew if something screwed up what I was going to do. And I think that's I think that even takes precedence over practice, because practice is something you can go and do, but unless you make a plan, you're probably not going to have everything you need to practice with. So.
Well, I think we're getting close to, it's probably enough time for the interview today. I'm sure we're probably going to have to interview you again here. We'll get more stories, but
I have so many stories about
good.
Movie stars and the people that I know, like Nick, that worked around movie stars. And
If there
All
was
good.
one moment in your career that's like the highlight moment or the highlight show or the highlight thing you've done, what would it be?
Well, that's really a hard question because there's so many. I really loved being. I got a Steadicam B camera operator job on a film that came to Saskatchewan, and the star was, oh God, her name just went out of my head. Oh my God. Huge star, still is a big star, Academy Award winner, Monster. She did Monster.
Oh, Charlize
Theron. And I was sitting at the Saskatchewan soundstage and waiting to be interviewed. And I heard a kerfuffle behind me, but I didn't turn around. And then this striking form walked past me and spun and looked at me and said, "Hi, who are you?" And I looked up and it was Charlize, and I stood up and I put my hand out to shake her hand, and she said, "Ah, you're tall. That's excellent." And she looked at the DOP and she said, "Hire him." And so he went, "Well, I guess you're hired," because I was tall. She had no idea that I could do the job or not. And another one that I really love, lots of young people don't know him, and because he's not of today's movie star standards, but Ray Liotta. I got to do a picture with Ray Liotta as an A camera operator, Steadicam operator, and we did it in Iowa of all places. And he's in person. He's as intimidating sounding and looking as he was in Goodfellas. And he had a little bit of a temper. But I managed to befriend him during the production. It was 4 months. Good Lord. Anyway, at the end of the show, it was my last day. It was his last day. And we were saying goodbye. Oh, that's right. We wrapped him out. He went off to his trailer, and I had one more shot to get some pickup shot. And then just as we were about to roll, the first AD, Kenny Chaplin, said, "Hey, Layton, whoa, hold everything. Ray's back here. He didn't realize that you were leaving town tomorrow." And I said, "Oh, okay, this isn't that nice." And so I stepped off the bus that we were shooting on, and there was Ray. And he came up and he gave me this great big hug. And he just said, "I want to thank you for the last 4 months. You were the only one I trusted." And I was like, "Oh, wow, I don't know how to take that." And, it's just one of those things that I see him now years later, like it's been 10 years since that picture, easily. And I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for both Charlize and Ray in whatever they do. So those are kind of neat moments.
Nick, do you know what we forgot to do?
What's that?
Record.
Oh, we wanted to get Layton to do a quick judge here. Okay.
Yeah, we need
5 minutes, Layton, or
oh,
you
yeah.
gotta go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
So Emery and I.
What am I judging? Oh my God, I hate judging.
This is what is actually fascinating about Emery, because it's like most film people / artsy people aren't as into like Emery's a huge sports, jock kind of guy.
Too. Yeah.
Anyways, he's super competitive. So you can't
like how you're blaming me for this. This was your
just take
idea.
a picture with Emery. It has to be a competition, right?
Yeah.
So basically we wanted to do this thing with this podcast or videocast or whatever it is,
right?
Where we get an idea of a shot and then we go out and do it. It's either B-roll or a quick photo or something, and then we get the guest to judge.
You're right.
Who did the best? Because everything has to be competition.
Oh my God, I'm going to create an enemy. Oh God.
So,
are you going to share a screen with me and show me these?
What happened? Well, yeah, I was so lazy, so I didn't. I just dug up an old one. Yeah. So it was someplace that you can't. It's not open to the public, that you can't just walk into.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I will share my submission into this. So now this This ended up being like, so it's just a photo. I think it's kind of a regular photo, something standard I would do.
Right.
But the area I took it in is super not open to the public. So I'll share it here.
Okay.
And that is my submission.
Mm.
So a little bit of background. This is a church that is, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dana, Saskatchewan.
I have actually. I've actually been there.
Well, this is the church at that army base, and the photo I picked for mine is the very front door of that.
Well, I love the patina of the door, the richness of the colors, and it's that door has certainly seen some weather for sure. Share away, Nick.
So this one here was on top of the ledge building when they did.
Looks like a painting.
What's it called? When they released the tower, when they did it with the copper.
Yep.
I did a video with that, and so this is how I finished the video. Was I just did a time lapse from up on the tower there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, this is really unfair for me because one's a still and one's one is cinema. So that's really unfair to ask me to pick which is best.
That's what makes it fun, though. Like you pick whatever your flavor is. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm gonna give some props to each of you. I'm gonna say, first of all, props to Emery for seeing a door and thinking, I'm gonna take a photograph of that, and then secondly, submitting it to me to judge, because I loved the patina of the door. I loved the look of the door. I loved the richness of the door. It spoke immediately, subject-wise. It had a reverence to it. So when you said it was a church door, I was not surprised. So I say props to that. Yours, Nicholas, the cinema, of course, I love cinema. I can't get away from that. And like I said, it almost looked unreal, as if you painted it, it was like like a watercolor almost. It was, all the colors were so rich and vibrant. And I like time lapses, and I like high shots, as long as they're not drones. I'm so sick of drone shots. I am so sick of drone shots. So they're both beautiful. There's beauty in both of them. Okay. But I'm going to say, and please don't, I want to create an enemy, because I love you both. But I'm going to go with Emery, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to go with Emery because he saw something that wasn't, that probably wasn't apparent to most people. He saw something in that door and that patina, that he captured with a camera, and I felt it as soon as I saw it. And I think beautiful. I think that tells a story in itself.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's actually, I felt like the time lapse told more of a story, I guess, and the fact that Nick did a holy grail in that, which is kind of nice. I've never actually done one. Yeah,
and it is beautiful, Nick. I mean, there's no getting away from it. It's a beautiful shot. But I just like perhaps because my tastes are changing. I love the avant-gardeness of the still shot of a monastical door, because it really did one single shot, tight shot, and really no context except for the fact that it was a beautifully patinaed door, but it still told me something. So that's pretty impressive.
Nice. Well, the best part about this is I'm the one who's got this lovely little scoreboard here. I get to put that little tick right by my name.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, so do I get to do another, when we talk about camera operators, do I get to do another judging? Yeah,
and actually what we need from you now is to give us like our next subject, the next thing we have to capture.
Oh, wow. Like, could it be anything in the world?
Well, I mean, as long as we can do it, yeah. Matt's first suggestion for us was a lighthouse in Saskatchewan, which there's only one, and it's a long drive.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And so, Emery, where are you? Regina?
Yep.
And Nicky, you're still in Moose Jaw, right?
Yeah.
It could be a location. It could be a style to copy. Like literally, the world's your oyster.
Yeah. Wow, that is a tough one. Good Lord. I wish you would have given me some warning.
It can be anything though. Like, it could be
I
a
know.
cat or a banana or.
Well, you know what? Here's something that you might be interested in, and I'm really interested in it. Now at this point in my life, and that is, I'm really interested in renewable energy. We just put solar panels on our house, and I'm really interested in renewable energies and the future of them. And I think that it's just sort of at the surface right now, and I think it's going to really, really explode. So yeah, so that's it. That's the one. Do that one.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Layton.
Hey, you bet, you guys. Thank you.
Hey,
Perfect. Thanks, Layton.
You bet.
Amazing.
Take care.
We'll see
You too. See you. Wow, what a great interview with Layton there, eh?
Yeah, it's awesome.
And somehow we're gonna do more of the show. I don't know what we're. No, I know what we're gonna do. When we started, we talked about talking about like our setups and stuff. So obviously, I'm lit up. Hopefully, lit a little better today. Nick, I see your background's looking a lot better. Looking more than just a wall.
Yeah. To be honest, I changed it because now I get to sit in a chair. I was actually kind of tired after standing by the time we were all done, like 3 hours last time.
Oh yeah. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. If you watched our last show, I think the big issue is my microphone. So I'm just doing, the old plug into the ear and into the computer, and I clearly do not sound as good as Nick. So I was looking at options, Nick, for this week, and there's some interesting stuff out there. So Shure released the MV7, I believe it's called, which is essentially, it's identical to the SM7B microphone, except it's a USB version, and it's essentially made for podcasters. But it's like, I think it's $350 Canadian.
That seems like a good deal. Because that Shure microphone is nice. I do have a cloud lifter if you do get that microphone and you need to borrow it, because the its gain level needs to be brought up. Either that or you need a really good preamp to use that one. But yeah, I'm curious if the USB one has that issue sorted. I should have did some research on it, but
they use like an app for it, so like I think it can be dealt with. The problem to me is that $350 price tag when we're doing a podcast for nothing right now, and we have no sponsors. Like we have yet to get Squarespace to sponsor us.
No, they haven't. I think that my mic is more than $350, but I just borrowed it from Brocco several years ago.
What is your mic? What are you using?
It's the Audio Technica AT40. What is it? Yeah, the 4040, AT4040.
Interesting.
One of the other microphones. Brock will never watch this, so he won't. He won't know.
We won't send it to him. Actually, one of the microphones I was looking at was the Audio Technica 2020, which seems like a good mic. But if I do that, I also need like an interface, right?
Yeah. I just run mine through my audio recorder, but it plugs into audio interface mode, so it hooks up to my computer USB.
And what are you using for that interface? Like, what's your recorder?
It's just one of the old Zoom ones, but it's like an 8-track one, so it's got 8 separate tracks for it. Got it for the documentary that we did years ago, but now hardly ever, like, this is all I use this recorder for, because plug audio straight into the camera and don't use it.
Interesting. So like one of the other things I was looking at, and I was thinking along the same lines, was like, I've already got lav mics, right, that I've used all the time. So I was thinking maybe just getting the interface. So the thing I was looking at was the Focusrite Scarlett. I think it's the 2i2.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Have you used them?
No, I know there's a voiceover guy in town here that uses something very similar, just to get the audio into his computer. So he's got his voiceover microphone and that. But no, it's a good way to go.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking like if we do continue this and COVID ever ends and you and I can actually get together, we could have our two mics plugged in at one time, which
Yeah.
might be kind of handy.
Have you looked up how much the AT4040 is?
Not the AT4040, but I looked at the AT2020, and I believe that was like around the $200 mark.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is around 400, the AT4040.
Yeah. Like, and that's the thing too. Like, so say I got like the Focusrite interface, I can always add a microphone later, right? Like, even if I want to get that Shure one, because I think I really do think it's going to be as good as what they say, or at least as all the reviews are saying. Or, if I wanted to do something cheaper, and it's not even that cheap, but Layton was using the Yeti.
Yeah, he sounded great.
Yeah, it sounded okay. I actually think your mic still sounds better.
Sounds
like
a bit
just
better.
how that's running. And then you could get even cheaper. I was thinking about if you search on like Amazon, you'll come across this brand called, I think it's pronounced Fine.
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, you got to look it up. But they get like pretty good reviews, and they have like a USB condenser kind of studio setup thing for like $150. And I think like if I didn't get this setup, like just got the microphone, it's like a $50 or $60 microphone. But it gets like great reviews.
Does Newer make a microphone? Because they're like the go-to for crappy video stuff that's actually decent.
I did not see any Newer microphones, so I'm not too sure if they do have those. But yeah, that Fine kind of got my attention just because of the price point. And like I said, the reviews were good. I like the idea of the Shure. I like the idea of actually another one is the Rode NT. So they do two versions, and this is where I run into a bit of problems. So they got the Rode NT USB and the Rode NT1. So the NT1's like everyone talks about it being one of the greatest microphones for the price range.
Is that the shotgun mic?
No, it's a condenser. I think it's a condenser.
Because maybe thinking of the Rode NTG2. I'm pretty sure.
That is the shotgun mic. You're correct. The NT1 is that like, well, it basically looks like your mic. And yeah, I think it's under $200 for it. And everyone talks about how good it is for vocals and everything else.
But then you still need the $100.
Still need the interface.
For the interface.
And then, but they also make a USB version. So now the big difference between the Shure MV7 and the Rode NT USB, don't quote me on this because I maybe should have looked at this better, but I'm pretty sure the Rode one is only USB. The MV7, the Shure microphone, also has an XLR input.
What? But it's cheaper, so it's $350. It also has an XLR input. There's no way it can sound as good then. It doesn't make any sense.
From what I heard online, I mean, you're listening with headphones in, I would say the difference is there's a difference, but it's like negligible.
Okay.
I don't think it matters.
I'd be tempted to get that Shure one though.
Because that one, to me, the two options that seemed right were the Shure and the Focusrite. So, because the Shure one, I could plug it in USB, use it tomorrow, and then, later, if we get together and do this and we need an interface, actually, we could probably just use your Zoom.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we could just run everything through because it's just an audio interface. So.
Well, that almost sounds like my decision's made.
Yeah.
It's more than I want to spend, but I mean, at the end of the day, at least it's not a straight up USB mic. I could use it more.
How old is it?
It just came out this year. Like I think it's, as far as like the audio world goes, in my mind, anyways, it's like the product of the year.
Yeah. That's kind of not I prefer to get something that's a year or two old where I can buy a used version of it, but that's just me being cheap, probably.
Well, I'll wait till 2021.
I don't think you're gonna find a used one on eBay just yet.
Yeah. You know what else, Nick? So talking about of the year kind of thing. So there's been a pile of all the videos coming out, the 2020 wrap ups. And, you know, for the kind of year it's been in like the photography world, this has probably been one of the best years for gear and stuff coming out. And let's be fair, I think it all revolves around the Canon R5.
Was that what's your pick right now? Like what camera came out that you're the most excited to see?
Actually, the camera I'm most excited to see is not out yet. There's some rumors, and they've been going around for a while that Canon had this like 100 megapixel sensor and all this stuff, and it sounds like they're trying to make the EOS R5 into just like a straight up photo camera, like really, I think, tame on the video stuff. And they're talking around 90 megapixels for it.
That's
which it sounds crazy, but like what gets me about it is like when you're doing landscapes and being able to go in to all those features on everything, it's magic. Like so when I made my switch from my 5D Mark II to the EOS R and just getting I think it's like 12 more megapixels in the EOS R than the 5D. No, it's even more than that. It's like 16. And like all that detail, all that stuff, I was like, I looked like a kid at a candy shop just looking at it all, right? Like zooming in more than I should be and pixel peeping like you can't believe. But yeah, it was great. So the more pixels always kind of excites me. And I really would like to see them do it more like just straight up photography. Almost like, honestly, even if they threw all the video stuff away, I would still look at getting that camera because I'm trying to stop video stuff and just do more photography.
Yeah, that's kind of Sony's got a few cameras like that, just super high megapixel cameras.
Yeah, like the A9 actually right now, like if you're looking for something like that, or you know, you want to do like a real serious like portrait studio thing, like for models where you need a high resolution, the A9 would be great. I think it's like at 45 or 46 megapixels. The R5 is at that as well. Both great options. But they get focused on these like other little things, like where they shoot really fast. Like both of them are shooting around that 20 frames per second, which is great for sports. So both cameras would be great for sports. I think I would still probably take like the A9 for something like that over the R5. But I think Canon's making a tear. They're going to take over that like soon. Yeah.
No, this is nice. That's what I love. I love how, because I don't follow camera news quite like I used to, so I get most of it from you.
Yeah. You know, it's funny too, like, so because I'm trying to start going that way, I'm paying more attention to it, and I'm like losing a lot of the video side with it though too. So like I don't really know what came out new aside from this microphone. That's really for video. And you know, I'm actually like I'm on the Red Camera's like mailing list and stuff, and like it doesn't even seem like they did anything with it this year.
Well, that could be a good thing for another episode or something. I could actually do some research on the cameras, tell you about a few things.
Yeah. The other thing too with the year in reviews, if you haven't checked it out, I really think you should check out the year-end thing that DP Review does with Chris and Jordan. They play a drinking game is what happens, and Chris gets pretty smashed on it, and it's pretty entertaining towards the end of it. I was laughing a few times, pretty good at him. And yeah, they're playing that headbands game, trying to guess the other like social media people. It was pretty good. And just too, like I said, Chris was kind of a highlight of the show for me. Some of his things he did were pretty funny. And then, yeah, everyone else has done them all. I've watched them all. It's interesting. I like Northrup's stuff and how he sort of broke everything down for their year in review. And
what did he break down with his?
Kind of like if you're going to buy cameras this year, what you should be looking at, or what he would be looking at for cameras. And he broke it down by like type as well. So like if you're a portrait photographer, landscape, sports, blah, blah. And yeah, went through like each camera. And the other thing I actually kind of like about what he does is he doesn't just talk about like new stuff. So like some of his landscape photography camera, was I think a Nikon D500 or something. And just because you can get a used one, like you mentioned doing, get it for a really good price and get a good setup, and you're still getting high megapixels, you're still getting all that stuff you want for landscape.
Nice. That's a good idea.
Yeah, so there's a lot of those things out for 2020 that you can look for online. They're all good, they're all worth watching. I think, Nick, for you and I think that probably wraps us up for the year as well.
Yeah, see you next year.
Perfect.
I'm sure I'll actually talk to you before next year, but
probably, but I doubt we'll have a show till the New Year's. Anyways, thanks to Layton for coming on. Thanks for all the camera stuff between Layton and Matt the last couple weeks here. And yeah, hope everyone else has a great holiday season.
Awesome.
Thanks for watching.
See you next year. Like, that's the power of photo, is it's that emotional connection. You see it, and if there's something in it that reminds you of something or has meaning to you, you can attach more meaning to it. Like, so this is not even a photo example, but so I made, my parents dropped off pierogies the other day, and I fried up, I put butter in the pan, I chopped up some onions.
I guarantee you they're going to pick something like with their kids in it or something. It's not going to be a great photo. It'll probably be a great reaction, right?
Yeah.
But the photo itself technically is not going to be good, and that's going to be their favorite. And you could ask, I'm almost sure 100% of people, I know it's not 100%, but it would be really, really high. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to be about those moments that you talk about in cinematic. No one cares.
Hey, if we do this again, one thing that I'm really, what I really like talking about too is, I alluded to it earlier, but the difference between being a cinematographer and a camera operator, and them being two very, very different roles and different crafts.
My elephant in the room here is going to be this camera falling over. I've got a car rig on a Tupperware container.
I think you're out of focus now too.
How am I going to show my video?
You share your screen.
And we can do that, okay.
So do you see at the bottom where it says share screen?
Yeah.
You did.
You're being a jerk now.
Well, hey. This isn't
okay, I got it.
This isn't that complicated, Nick.
Grammarly. Download Grammarly.
Oh, into the jar. Oh, into the punch or whatever. Yeah.
Santa's getting the party started.
What's up?
It was a you issue, not a me issue.
Oh, yes. Usually. That's my thing. Me issues. All right, good. Hold on, I gotta do some stretching. Oh, my back.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even sign my deal memos. I'd have the office bring them out to set, right? It's like, you lazy shit, Layton. Yeah.